Okay, Angelica, we're here with Angelica Intriago of Despaña. Despaña Fine Foods and Cafe and Despaña Vinos. Cheers.
Salud.
Saúde.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you
Salud.
for being here.
Thank you.
So, you are the soul of Despaña, right? Could I say that?
I don't know. I guess that's your
I
impression. So I think
guess, right?
I
Yeah.
feel very honored for you to say that.
So maybe there's people, I hope there's people watching this video in general, but maybe there's people watching who don't know about Despaña. So can you kind of describe what it is that you do here?
Well, what we do here is we call it our Spain in the city. Really, it's our piece of our heart, and as you called it, our soul of Spain, of falling in love with that country, the culture,
Yeah.
and representing it as best we can through the ingredients that we have here available to us. And we opened in 2006, and that's how we had all the support of all of our chefs, of consumers that really couldn't make it out to Queens, where we started and where we
Yeah.
had the la matriz, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The heart of the business, and from there it's a long and beautiful story.
Okay.
Yeah, in Soho.
So tell me how you kind of fell in love with Spain in general in your own life, because there's a story there, right?
Oh my God, that's another
It's
interview.
another interview. Yeah.
But a lot of people don't know that I lived in Europe for a bit. I lived in Italy. That was my first love. Really, I really loved that culture, and I traveled throughout Europe, and I never went to Spain. I never stopped in Spain. When I came back to New York and I started looking for jobs, and I fell with Despaña. Despaña was like an interim position for me between jobs, and that was my first entry level really position as a professional trying to do my things with food.
Wow.
Food was always a passion for me. So it wasn't something new to me, but Spain was. I mean, jamón serrano, jamón ibérico,
Yeah.
all these turrón. And I started in November, so it was
Conservas,
different.
jamón, all the
Claro,
things.
but that's
yeah.
how I started, yeah. And so my husband's business partner was from Galicia.
Okay.
And that was my first touch of realm. Asturias and Galicia, no? Primos hermanos, they're cousins, right? Very close, right next to each other. And he was from Cedeira.
Ah, wow.
So he would always tell me about, percebes and tortilla and his passion for food and the sea.
Yeah.
And for me, the ocean has always been something enthralling and amazing. And I said, oh my God, I want to visit that coast. La Costa de la Muerte,
Yeah.
all
of the
all
Rias
the
Baixas,
different.
all of the things. So it's fitting we're drinking Albarino, right? We're talking about conservas, we're talking about the coast. So that's a really big thing that you do here is you sort of, I think Despaña could probably take a lot of the credit for launching this tinned fish from Spain craze in the US. So I'm going to take a drink of Albarino, you take a drink of Albarino, but how did that come about, that conservas boom? Do you remember?
Yeah, I remember that when I started traveling, I did get exposed to conservas because I went to Galicia. They invited me to a trip. One of my first trips, sponsored trips, was out there. And for me, it's, oh my God, this seafood. And visiting that area and visiting Cedeira and seeing all of that, for me was something that I want to bring this back. I want to bring this to the US. And then I knew about all the different regulations and all of the intricacies that a lot of consumers don't know about, that for me was eye-opening, a learning experience. And really I had to knock on a lot of doors, not because the quality wasn't there and the participation, but because there was no really a big interest, right, in doing all of the legwork and the paperwork, because they were already selling their conservas there in Europe, and so they didn't have all the approvals that were required. And so it was not easy. It was not easy, and I think we were ahead of our time, and we did start with those, and slowly but surely, coming, fast forward, we have a lot of availability of different recipes of conservas. I think the resurgence of a lot caused that explosion, and we already had our foot in the door, so that helped a lot, and really crediting part of that, and now there's a whole boom of many different companies that work there. But yeah, I think that was the start for me.
So let me ask you, because one of the things that I like to talk about is we kind of debunk some of these stereotypes that people have, especially in Spain, about Galician people, right? That they're so suspicious and they're closed off. Did you find when you went and knocked on the door and said, "Hi, we'd like to bring your tinned fish to the U.S.," were people like, "Oh, who's this lady? What is she talking about?"
I think there is a part of that.
Yeah.
But I don't think not only of Galicians. I would say that it's just something that what is your interest?
Like who
what
are you?
are
Where do you
having?
come from? Yeah.
What? So and yes, I guess Galicians. If you talk, about Madrid and different, maybe they have a little bit of that. But for me, I have to say that no, they've been very. Once you know, they know you.
Right.
It is, and yeah, and people say, well, that's very common, but really, it isn't. And just the magic that happens
Yeah.
when they know you, that they just embrace you in a way that is not very common in other
You
regions
sort
of
of
Spain.
roll out of the dinner, right? You leave
You
the
can't
dinner
roll. You
table and
can't leave.
yeah,
No, no,
right.
wait. You can't even leave.
Right. You know,
Right?
have
Because
a
it's
little.
more and
Have a
more.
little. Yeah. Yeah.
Entonces, that is what Galicia represents for me.
Yeah.
It's just once you're embraced,
Generosity. Yeah.
it's there's no letting go, and there's no reason for you not to keep falling in love with all the different things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
for sure.
All right. So I want to talk about wine a little bit. What was your first experience with Galician wine?
Uh, well, in New York, definitely
Yeah.
before I even opened Despaña Vino Sin Más, Albarino. Albarino was
Albarino.
the wine that I started tasting and really getting familiar with wine. It
Yeah.
wasn't a big thing for me, but it became
Yeah.
because of the learning.
Do you remember more or less what year that may have been? Your first Albarino?
Yes, it was my first Albarino. Again, I started at Despaña in the year 2000. So I would
Okay.
have said maybe 2001, 2002 when I started exploring
Do you
that.
remember what it was? The
Yes,
wine?
I remember precisely. It was a tasting that we were invited to in Newark, in New
Wow.
Jersey, and it was Gran Basan.
Mm.
It was Gran Basan, and they had an orujo in
Wow.
addition to that, but it was something that he brought in his
You
bag,
never
and he
forget
wanted.
your first orujo.
Never will forget my first orujo, and it was Gran Basan. Yes.
Wow.
So
Very
yeah,
cool.
so that was my first Albarino that I remember specifically tasting.
And so from there, right, it just expanded, especially in New York in this market. But do you think that it was you were in Newark because there's a lot of Gallegos in Newark, or it was just in Newark because you were in Newark?
No, I was in Newark because it was a Galician restaurant,
Yeah.
and we were invited for this tasting that was organized in that location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, and then in terms of Galician wine, how have you seen since the year 2001, right? How have you seen that evolve here in the U.S. alongside Spanish food? Because a lot of what you do is food, right?
Yeah.
The jamón ibérico, the conservas, the cheeses, even, right? How do you think that Spanish food and wine have sort of evolved in tandem?
Oh, definitely. I think there's been a huge explosion. Definitely chefs like Ferran Adrià, one of the first, to position Spain on the map and the tapas scene. So I saw that ingredients-based, proposition from customers that wholesale accounts that wanted to get piquillo peppers, and conservas came later, but definitely the wine, I would say the wine component in parallel, in comparison to the food and the ingredients, I think there was a much quicker explosion of regions and knowing things and varietals of wine. Talk about not only Albarino, but regions like Monterrey, not only Rias Baixas,
Ribeira
and
Sacra,
yes,
things,
Ribeira
right?
Sacra, all those regions that perhaps weren't as known and became known through importers that really wanted to seek out different flavors, different kind of nuances, and I think Galicia has that magic of regions and varietals that were forgotten, and that were brought back.
Absolutely.
And so people like Jose Luis Mateos, right, that we talk about, Rodri Mendez,
right.
I even call onto Raul, right, or Raul Perez, that the Albarino sketch underwater.
Well,
that was one of the things.
Galicia, it's the fifth province.
It's the fifth, but their friendships that they made, like Rodri, and doing that sketch was kind of that new nuance. And not only that, but I think Albarino and the growth of, when we go back to Albarino, aged Albarino, who would have thought, right? Because Albarino wasn't, it was something de añada, right? Something of the cosecha and doing that. But then you have Paso Señorans, for example, right? One of the first that really brought, aged Albarinos. And I think there's still a lot more to be done with that. And so Galicia most definitely has a lot of different regions to explore, varietals, field blends that are being brought back. And I think that's where we're at right now. And there's still more to be seen, for sure, in Galicia.
So then tell me a little bit about, we were talking about, you alluded to Despaña Vino Sin Más. So you opened a wine shop just for Spanish wine. Did people say, are you crazy?
No, people didn't say I was crazy. I think it was a normal transition for people that knew us. Like, okay, where's the wine component, right? So we opened the store without having an on-premise license, which is hard, right? And if you have food, how are you not going to have wine? Huh? And so I learned in my research that you couldn't sell wine to go here. You have to either on-premise, or in New York, you have to open a separate business to have a wine to go, and I wanted cherries. So it took us a while to apply for it and to find a space. We knew that it had to be next door. It couldn't be somewhere else because of the whole logistics and the whole niche environment. And we wanted to create a sister store environment, which really helped us, bring that component of wine and selecting and being, creative into what we can do at Despaña in our cafe.
Yeah.
So that really allowed us, and that happened until 2011. And people didn't think I was crazy. Actually, we were very much embraced.
Cool.
Purveyors coming out. Everybody wants to come and see, oh, what are you doing? What do you have on your shelves? And I think it added that sparkle to the experience that people can have here at Despaña.
So it seems like the American consumer is slowly but surely coming around to Spain and Spanish food in general. I think one of the things that people say that we're up against in this fight to sort of get people to recognize how great all of this is people say, well, Spanish food isn't on the same level as Italian food or French food or even Greek food or all of these people, or these wine regions rather, that make wine. You have Italian food, you had a lot of Italian immigrants.
Mm-hmm.
French food is the top of the top. Greek food, again, a lot of immigrants. So a lot of Spanish immigrants in the 20th century, they didn't come to the US. A lot of them went to Latin America, or a lot of them, especially from Galicia, they went to Germany or Switzerland or wherever. So it's hard, people say, because there's not a lot of food, there's not a lot of restaurants that really make you say, oh, wow, I want to drink Spanish wine with this. So it seems like you're doing a little bit of shipping, right? You ship across the US.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that growth with wine, do you think, as well, food and wine, as people slowly wake up and say, hey, wow, this is cool?
Oh, yes. And for example, during the pandemic, there were a lot of videos and classes that people wanted to do, and we saw a big interest in signing up for those classes and in really exploring, what are you going to send me in wines. And we did partner with many people, and we did wine and cheese pairings and food, and again, it was exploring things that people outside of their comfort zone. So I agree, Spain is not a high volume cuisine or wines that people are familiar with, but the interest to learn more is there in the American consumer.
Definitely.
And I think that's where Despaña and storefronts that do offer these wines that are special is people want to learn more, and they are appreciating the value and the quality. And I think that's where Spain fits in people's palates that are looking for different items and that are still not expensive. Galicia has these small producing regions and of wines that are still not expensive if we compare them to France or to Italy. So I think that exploration, a lot has been done, but I think there's so much more because of accessibility. Perhaps, storefronts that could have a region just of Galicia, of wines that you've never heard of besides Albarino. And I think the exploration by the consumers to do that is there. The interest is there. It's just having the availability to talk about it. And they definitely are moments of hand sales. And I think we're in the moment. People want to hear the stories.
Yeah, they want to be educated.
They want to be educated, and they want to hear the stories of these small producers that are doing things in regions that are different, like the wine we're having today with Shusho. He's done something that a lot of Galicians haven't been able to do, right? Get a whole parcel of different, a whole vineyard that can work. That's something that people wouldn't sell before. Again, minifundios, the little things, he was able to do that. And these are the younger generations that are working hard to bring their passion to flourish. And I think that's where we see that Spain has a place in the US.
Great.
And Galicia,
of course. So the last thing I want to do is the lightning round. Okay? So I'm going to ask you a few questions, and just respond as quickly as possible. Okay?
Put him on the spot. A ver.
All right. You ready? Describe Galicia in 3 words.
Authenticity, green, and passion.
Okay. A wine that changed your life. It doesn't have to be Galician.
A wine that changed my life? No, it is Galician. A wine from Jose Luis in his vineyard, and it was a white wine. Yeah, I don't recall the name, but it didn't have a label.
Jose Luis Mateo.
Yes,
okay.
in Monterrey.
Monterrey. Okay, fantastic. Your favorite Galician word?
Graciñas.
Graciñas, right? Hospitality.
Yes.
Okay. A wine that you really love from Galicia right now?
Right now? Oh my God. I think it's Sobre Ribas. I'm not.
Sobre
but it's Ribas, a natural. Sobre Ribas, yes.
Yeah, Nanclares.
It's a Nanclares, yes. I really love that. I think
fantastic.
It has a nice,
Okay, and last but not least, why should people know Galician wine?
Because it's different. It's unique. It'll be eye-opening. That's the best
Fantastic.
thing. Yeah.
Cool. Well, we'll finish your salude.
Muchas
Salud.
gracias.
Thank you,
Salude, ¿no?
Angelica.
That's the word.
There you go.
Gracias.